in, okay, Victor? So just hang
Sure.
tight for a second. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I am Amber Janeski, producer and host with HAPS News. Today, we are on the ground in McAllen, Texas, at the McAllen Central Bus Station with a journalist and contributor who's on the ground at the bus station. His name is Victor Castillo. We are looking at migrants getting off of bus stations, entering either the shelter or the actual bus station that is catty corner to the shelter to be able to seek asylum or take their final journey to be with family members. Victor, hi, how are you?
Thank you. Yes, good evening in McAllen. What you're seeing right now is approximately about 30 migrants that just got dropped off from one of those buses that are contracted by ICE, more than likely, after these migrants have illegally crossed into the U.S. Once they are processed by Border Patrol, they are handed that piece of paper that you see in their hands, which is basically for the majority of them a notice to appear before a federal judge. You can see them carrying like plastic bags where they have some personal belongings. I
Mm-hmm.
can see the DHS logo there in one of the bags.
Right.
You can see babies. Here's one with a diaper. Hola, mija, ¿cómo estás?
Bien.
Sí. ¿De qué país viene?
Honduras.
Okay, that lady says she comes from Honduras.
Mm-hmm.
¿De qué país viene usted, joven?
Honduras.
Okay, the majority of them are from Honduras. ¿Por qué están usando ese uniforme color naranja?
Porque ya nos lo dieron.
Okay, it's very unique that they're wearing this orange suit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you can see there another toddler.
It's a
It was
baby.
it was
Mm-hmm.
just a day ago when a young mother with three children were found dead here
Right.
near McAllen along the Rio Grande River. Very unfortunate, sad news. As you can see, these mothers who come with their children, they're risking their lives. Let me go back to the on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're
Hey, good
risking
to see your face.
they're risking their lives every day. Uh, I was talking to a former border patrol agent just last week, and he was telling me that some of his friends who work at the detention facilities are desperate because um, they simply have not enough room.
Right.
They don't have the conditions for so many migrants that are coming to the area. They're just crossing every day. They're busloads. Here in McAllen, in particular, and let me go back in here to the bus station. As you can
Yeah.
see, here we have at least 100 migrants that are waiting their bus ride up north, and some are taking an 8:30 trip,
Mm-hmm.
others are taking a 9 p.m. trip up north. And here we have somebody from Venezuela. ¿Usted viene de Venezuela, señor? Me comentó hace rato.
Correcto. Bueno, un vuelo comercial hasta México y me trasladé hasta la frontera.
This Venezuelan man says that he flew from Venezuela into Mexico City. Eventually, he crossed illegally into the U.S. Cruzó ilegalmente.
Correcto. Como 3 días.
He says that he was detained at the Border Patrol station for about 3 days. As you can see, his wife and two children, had to
Mm-hmm.
go through that whole experience of being in cold rooms.
Is
Uh,
there any way
yes,
he might be willing to speak with us a little bit
sure,
longer? My heart is very,
sure,
I have a very soft spot, big soft spot for
sure.
Venezuelans, considering HAPS News has been covering the conditions and circumstances in Venezuela for a while. I mean,
Any particular
basically,
question?
yeah, I mean, like, I would love to hear what the process was like traveling from Mexico City to McAllen and the border at McAllen.
Si me preguntan cómo fue su proceso de llegar de la Ciudad de México a Reynosa y cruzar.
Bueno, con unos compatriotas que estaban en el refugio y conocí a una persona y la persona me ayudó a pasar ilegalmente. Pero
¿Cuánto le cobraron?
Creo que fueron, yo pagué $2,000 por los cuatro.
He says that a friend of his was already at the shelter in Reynosa. He's the one who recommended for him to come to the border, and eventually he made it to that shelter and had to pay $2,000 to cross illegally
Oh
into
my
the
gosh.
U.S.
And that they must be in like an incredibly advantaged, I mean, this is such a like seems like an extreme thing to say, but $2,000 is a ton of money whenever you're coming from a place like Venezuela. Like that's absolutely incredible. So there are quite a few questions in the chat river right now. First of all, David Newman says this is very enlightening and that he would love to hear some of their stories. And Victor, I know that you chatted with quite a few people before we went live, so I would love for you to walk around and talk to people like you were before.
Sure.
But in a couple of questions that people have, more specifically, if you want to ask them this, if you talk to anybody else in the orange shirts, I think they went to the shelter possibly, but they're curious what the orange shirts mean. And then also we're curious where they're headed. And I believe that, yeah, Andra asked that.
Okay.
Where do they hope to
Sure.
go? Thank
Sí,
you.
señora, disculpe, ¿a qué parte del país se dirige?
Mérida. Mérida. ¿Sí?
¿En qué estado aquí en Estados Unidos van a ir? ¿Tienen familia? ¿Tienen amigos?
Sí, familia.
Familia.
Mérida. ¿Sí?
Okay, she says that she's got family in Maryland, and that's where she's
Mhm.
heading. ¿Con cuántos niños viene?
Solo con una. Sí.
Cuéntame la experiencia que tuvo en las celdas de detención de la patrulla fronteriza. ¿Cómo estaban, cómo eran las condiciones?
No, pues ahí tratando de sobrevivir las condiciones allá cuando uno cae, pues sí, hay baño, comida y todo, ahí solo de aguantar un poquito. Sí.
She's got one child, and they're heading to Maryland. Her experience in the Border Patrol detention facility is basically very cold. They just had to put up basically with the cold conditions in there, and just hope to get released as soon as possible.
Where is she
As
from?
usted me dijo que es de Honduras, de Salvador. Yeah, she's from El
Mhm.
Salvador. ¿Y usted de qué parte viene?
De Guatemala,
Lady comes from Guatemala. ¿Cuántos niños vienen con usted?
solo ella. Sí.
As you can see, that's her baby.
Hi. Oh my
She's
gosh.
hold,
Oh,
she
hi.
she's smiling, and she's
Yeah, sweet
holding.
little
Enséñame
thing.
la muñeca. Enséñame la muñeca. She's holding a little doll in her hand, as you can
Mhm.
see. That's what keeps her smile going.
Mhm.
She's beautiful. Está muy
Yeah,
bonita su niña. Sí.
absolutely. Victor, if you don't mind asking them just a little bit more about their story, their backstory, why they're leaving their country and
Sí.
why they're choosing to come to the U.S.
Sure. ¿Qué fue lo que le movió a salir de su país y buscar Estados Unidos?
Pues de que allá no hay trabajo y vengo buscando un futuro mejor para mi hija.
Basically, she had no job opportunities, employment opportunities, and she's looking for a better future for her daughter.
Mhm.
¿Qué fue lo más complicado en el trayecto?
Pues donde nos tenían porque había mucho frío para dormir y para ella, hacía demasiado frío.
She says that the most complicated thing at the detention facility was the cold, especially because she's only a child, a young child,
Yeah.
and it was having to just put up with that
Were they
cold temperatures.
provided were they provided any kind of like blankets or pillows? Like what were they given to
Sí,
eat?
¿qué es lo que le dieron? ¿Les dieron algunas cobijas, almohadas, qué ropa ahí en el centro de detención?
Pues ahí donde estábamos, la verdad, no nos daban unos nylons para taparnos. Sí, exacto. Ya cuando venimos aquí nos dieron ropa, nos atendieron muy bien, gracias a las personas que nos atendieron bien. Ahí no había nada.
Basically, they were giving just like a plastic to cover themselves with, but there was no clothing. ¿Les dieron de comer? ¿Qué les dieron de comer allí?
Eran como unos burritos que nos pasaban dando y leche y una manzana.
They were given milk, an apple, and a burrito to eat.
Mhm.
As you can see, many of the migrants here um, uh, are bringing children. I mean,
Mhm.
here's one that looks like 8 years old, so on and so
Yeah.
forth. But again, they're escaping lack of opportunities for employment, lack of opportunities for education. That's what the general story is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she, in particular, just mentioned that the cold weather or the cold in the detention facility was the hardest thing for her.
Absolutely. I mean, it's totally, honestly, that's surprising. I'm surprised that they keep the AC so low, just considering all of the imagery that you're seeing coming out of a lot of, or, the most horrific imagery that you're seeing come out of detention centers where there are people in El Paso where it can get well over 100 degrees being kept outside in tents. Yeah, that's really hard.
So as you can see, we have at least 100 migrants here waiting for their bus to take off to board. They don't have as much personal belongings, just a few things that the Catholic Charities here are located catty corner from the central bus station has given them. Maybe a
Mm-hmm.
set of clothes, maybe some snacks. I can see a bag here of snacks that
Mm-hmm.
probably esa se las dio ahí en la Caridades Católicas esa bolsa, sí, yeah. So they're just getting ready. But as you noticed, our first group of migrants was one that was dropped off by CBP agents, and they were walking over to the Catholic Charities shelter, which is just across the street.
Mm-hmm.
Once that they have an opportunity to take a bath, to change of clothes, to get some um, meals, hot meals, hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
because more than likely at the border patrol station is just something cold like hot dogs and things like that. Um, but once they get a shower, the Catholic Charities help them get a bus ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Then they walk over here to the central bus station. I want to show
Right.
you here, how close the Catholic Charities is. Um,
Right.
I
And
just
that's intentional. Like they this is nothing new in McAllen, Texas. Just the influx is the or the vast number of people is what's different and why this is garnering such news attention, right?
right,
Mhm.
countless of
Yeah.
migrants. Now, that's the outside of the central bus station, and if I just turn around, you can see here, catty corner, the Catholic Charities, a humanitarian respite center, and they get assistance from different organizations, churches. Somebody that came a little while ago approached me and just asked me, "Hey, how can I help? What are some of the things that they need?" Um,
So this, I would love for you to help, and it'd be great if we could, keep chatting with some migrants either in the bus station or who are being dropped off at the shelter. But I would love for you to help contextualize what we are witnessing right now. So a vast majority of the migrants are from Central America, some from South America, like the gentleman that we spoke with from
Colombia.
Venezuela. Yeah, Venezuela and Colombia. Um, but
Some have the
the,
opportunity, like
mm-hmm.
the gentleman we were talking to earlier, to fly, to
Right.
catch a flight. But like you said, they
That's a
have to,
rarity. Mm-hmm.
right, they have to get into some type of debt with probably a family relative
Mm-hmm.
here who is already in the U.S.
Right.
They will probably wire some money so they can get the airplane tickets. But the majority of them from Central America, they have to sell their homes,
Mm-hmm.
their properties, the little that they have. They basically they sell everything, or they have stored uh, for all of their lives, and that's how they make their way across different borders: El
Mm-hmm.
Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and then the toughest terrain is basically Mexico, because as soon as they get into Mexico, the criminal organizations, they see them as products. They don't see
Right.
them as humans.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they may kidnap for ransom. They may be asking their relatives in the U.S. For money, even to their relatives back in their countries. So they do double extortion,
Mm-hmm.
and if they make it out from that kidnapping, they continue on. But still, the criminal element still there. Mexico is a huge country, and they're always at risk. They're
Right.
vulnerable. If they make
So,
it to
mm-hmm.
Reynosa, that's where Senda de Vida shelter is. Um, They have two separate dorms, one for women, one for men. Again, they take another opportunity for shower, get some clothing. But that
And that's
shelter,
another shelter on
that's
the
on the
across the
Mexican side.
river on the Mexican side and across from McAllen.
Correct. Uh, so they may pay $500 per person. That family from Venezuela, they paid $2,000 for all four of them. So you can see that that's a moneymaker for the criminal element. If just do the math, if we had 300,000 in a year or 400,000, like it was the highest peak for Barack Obama in deportations. Um, just do the math, multiply that times 500 or 1,000.
Right.
Uh, it all
It
these
adds up.
it
And yeah. And I really appreciate all of the context and it's super helpful. And I'm going to try to, summarize this as best as I can. But while I'm doing that, is there any way you could go find some more people to chat with? I
sure.
know that people who are watching this right now are very interested in the
See, this
migrants and refugees
what
journeys.
organization are you with?
We're the Bay Area Border Relief.
So you're from California.
So sound
You made it all the way from the Pacific to the Gulf Coast.
yes.
What brought you here? What motivated you to make it all the way over here?
Really just about the heart, the humanitarian heart. We're all human beings, and I don't think any of us would want to see anyone suffer the way they do, especially in the children's detention centers. We've been working with a lot of infants who are sick, coming from there, who are neglected there. I actually had a personal experience with one of the infants in here at the respite center where she had a fever. They stripped. The mom was telling us that she was stripped of her clothes naked, and in a very cold. The lights on, so to me, it's a torture method. But all this and with the baby being sick, they didn't do anything until they got here at the respite center, where we had to feed her, bathe her, give her clothes, give her medicine, and make sure that she was okay. So I mean, there's a lot of things that's going on. If you take the opportunity to just listen to the people and what they've gone through, you can really hear their stories. And
What broke your heart?
that broke my heart. An infant, 5 months ago. You know what I mean?
It's
So
avoidable.
I don't care who it is. It's a brother or sister, however you want to put it, grandmother, granddaughter. It's an infant, a 5 month year old. So the innocence in that, the beauty when we give life to it, what are we trying to do? We're trying to destroy it. What did an infant do to anybody?
From your perspective, what is the U.S. doing? Are they even doing enough?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're here too. I think a lot of people would say they're outraged, and I understand, but I think there needs to be more action. That's politically from the top down, you know, and it's not okay, because like I said, as a human being, from the heart, we have to have respect, love, and dignity for everyone. It doesn't matter what nationality, ethnicity, however you want to put it. At the end of the day, it's about the human spirit.
What comes to mind if you think of any solution that might help alleviate all these migrants experiencing this?
I
And
think,
I appreciate all this, but
in
after
my
this
opinion, I
question, I
think
would love
there's a lot
to
of
talk to some
politics
migrants, please.
behind it.
Thank you so much.
Whether it's about money or because I think the U.S. chooses to intervene when they want to, as far as a humanitarian perspective, if they want to approach it that way, and that's all perspective. So I think there's a lot of perspectives that clash. But in my opinion, I feel that they are entering the country the right way, and this is the only way that we've allowed them to. So if this is not the right way, we have to figure out a way.
Thank you so much. Your name again?
Jimmy Yang.
Thank
Thank you
you
so
so
much.
much. That was
Thanks so
really
much.
incredible.
We're going to
Um,
come back to the waiting area and
yeah.
try to talk to some other migrants.
So, if you're just now joining us, I'm Amber Janeski, producer and host with HAPS News. We're joined by Victor Castillo, who is a journalist on the ground in McAllen, Texas. We are in the McAllen Central Bus Station, where it is full of migrants from primarily Central America, but also South America, who are escaping humanitarian crises, economic crises, lack of jobs, and just basic well-being. who have been journeying up through South and Central America to get to the U.S. to either seek asylum or be detained at the border and go through the process to be allowed into the border, allowed into the country. So thank you so much for joining. If you are enjoying this stream, please give us a retweet. This is an important story. We want a lot of eyes on it.
Joven, ¿qué
So
fue lo que le motivó a venir para Estados Unidos? What motivated him to come to the U.S.?
No, pues buscar una vida mejor y poder tener un trabajo.
Seeking employment and seeking a better life. ¿Alguna experiencia difícil que tuvo en el camino?
No, nomás su sufrimiento en el camino, experiencias que uno lleva.
Viene con su familia.
Es mi hijo.
He comes with his young boy. He's eating an apple right now. ¿Cuáles fueron las condiciones dentro de la patrulla fronteriza?
Pues no, yo me entregué nomás y nos trajeron para las hieleras y hasta la vez nos salió bien todo.
¿Estaba pidiendo asilo político?
Sí.
¿Cuál es la razón por la que la mayoría de ustedes piden el asilo?
Ok, yo vengo de Honduras. En mi país no hay un trabajo digno para uno de pobre. El gobierno
thank you so
ahorita
much for the
está que
shout
nos
out,
está apoyando
Noel.
lo
I
que es la
really
educación
appreciate
de
that.
nuestros hijos. Quiere privatizar las escuelas. No hay una seguridad. Las pandillas.
Basically, gang violence in his country, lack of employment opportunities is what motivated him to come to the U.S. ¿Cuál es su nombre y es a dónde que se dirige?
Yo me llamo Félix Antonio. Me dirijo a Mérida.
Okay, he's going to Maryland. Thank you, Felix. And his child right now just eating an apple there. Other children, as you can see, they're so tired from their trip that they're just
Babies.
falling asleep. You can see that young girl who's just sleeping
Sacked
there
out.
on. Yes.
How many kids do you think are actually? I have one thing. I'm gonna chat you something below. If you see something in purple below, that's from me. And you can just I'm just to be real transparent. So you can follow my directions from there. But how many? And don't hesitate to ask any questions. How many kids do you think are in the bus station right now?
I can just I guesstimate here right now. I can think about 20, 25 children easily. How did they manage to enter into the U.S.? Well, that's a really good question. Some take the risk of just swimming across, but the majority of them pay a smuggler. We just heard from the man from Venezuela that he paid $500 per person. For the family he ended up paying $2,000, and that's just an illegal crossing. That's not taking the migrants into some type of a safe house or anything like that. If a migrant wants to make their trip and a secure trip to, let's say, make it to Houston, of course, that fare would go up. But at this time, it just looks like the criminal element is just crossing them illegally. The Felix, the young man that we just spoke with, he said that he crossed illegally and he turned himself in. He didn't try to run away from federal agents. He just turned himself in, seeking asylum, and his basis for seeking asylum was the gang violence in his country, uh, poverty, lack of employment opportunities, and lack of educational opportunities as well. So they end up, as you can see, the majority of them have like a yellow envelope. Let me flip the camera around. Um, that yellow envelope is what contains a notice to appear before a federal judge.
Right.
And the government basically waits for them for that hearing, but unfortunately, the majority of them don't show up because of fear of deportation, or just for fear that their asylum basis, for getting that piece of paper is not supported, or it doesn't have enough support uh, to obtain that asylum.
Right. So I know that whenever this is, I mean, just to be completely transparent, Victor and I were planning on going live in about an hour, and I was just showing him through the HAPS app, and he happened to also just go to the McAllen Bus Station to scope it out at the same time. And while we were walking through, a group of migrants showed up, which is just so, it was shocking. And I literally just immediately messaged my executive producer in hopes to get us live, which we are doing right now. So one of our treasured Venezuelan contributors is one of the people that asked, how did they manage to get into the U.S.? It's always great to see you here, Gabby. Thank you for joining. Um, So, if you're just now joining us, we are at a bus station in McAllen, Texas, which has been heavily covered in the news lately due to the influx of migrants crossing the border, being detained in detention centers there while they are seeking asylum or crossing the border illegally. Um, the really fascinating thing about this bus station, and I'm sure that this is, pretty much a similar instance across most bus stations along the border in Texas. There is a Catholic, I was about to call
But
it a safe house, but it's like a charity center across the
it's a
way that
shelter.
is a shelter. Thank you. That takes in refugees and helps them get settled, gives them some food, some water, and a shower. What are we looking at right now, Victor?
Okay, the family from Venezuela stepped out. I figure they're getting ready to board uh, their bus. ¿A dónde se dirige? ¿A qué me dijo?
Um, Dallas.
This Venezuelan family is heading to Dallas, Texas, and they're just getting ready to board here at any minute. As soon as they let him, they open the door.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people already on the bus. They're probably just
Mm-hmm.
waiting. So that's one of the families that we spoke with, that they paid
Mm-hmm.
$2,000 to get crossed illegally. That's on top of whatever they paid their flight from Venezuela to Mexico City and from Mexico City to Reynosa. Reynosa is across the border from McAllen. So that's the 8:30 bus. There is another one that is taking off at 9.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two main buses that are going to be departing tonight.
Mm-hmm. So Colleen RN says, "Why won't those Congress people complaining, using them, not passing legislation?" She also says, "I work with a legal migrant population in Cali. Wonderful people for the most part."
Good question.
Yeah.
Well, as you may already know, on Sunday, um, Donald Trump had announced that they were going to begin massive deportations of migrants. But then he suddenly sent out a tweet saying that he was putting a hold for 2 weeks, as per Nancy Pelosi's request to to work with both sides and come up with a solution in 2 weeks. Um, that was the reason of putting on hold the massive deportations. Um, we still yet gotta see if they're gonna come up with a solution. The thing is that if they have not done anything in decades, it would surprise me that they come up with something in 2 weeks. But uh,
Mm-hmm.
but this is a crisis now. Uh,
Right.
the federal agents can't um, handle this massive influx of migrants. They're doing as much as they can, and we have to respect what they do. Um, they protect the border, they protect the nation. Um, but of course, if Congress is not providing enough funding, enough manpower to to process all these migrants, then we have a huge challenge. What you're looking at now is pretty much all the migrants getting up now. They're gonna start boarding. Um, let me. They're gonna make a line and start boarding the bus.
I would I would love, I mean, this visual is absolutely incredible. And yeah, if there's any way that you could talk to some of the parents of children there and ask them, how they feel about
¿Cómo
being
se siente ya poder irse al norte a
vilified
casa?
a lot
No, pues ya más
in the media.
tranquila de que ya pasamos todo el peligro del
She feels at peace now, at ease, because now they have endured this long trip and they're safe now. Señora, ¿cómo se siente ya finalmente
And also more specifically,
Bien,
there's often a
más bien,
question that's,
gracias a
how
Dios.
could parents do this to their
Me siento bien,
children?
gracias a Dios.
How do they react to that?
She's very happy. She's heading over to see her sister. Oh,
It's a
¿qué
beautiful
le
smile.
diría usted a los migrantes que tienen niños pequeños como el de usted? ¿Qué le diría? Porque es un riesgo venir para acá.
Ujú.
¿Qué le diría a otros migrantes, a otras mamás? I basically was asking her, what would you tell other mothers who have young children like hers, knowing all the risk? And she just smiled. She
Yeah.
didn't give an answer. That basically just tells us that there's a risk and
I mean, I
when
think
making a
what
trip like this.
absolutely. And I think I think that this is a perfect visual context to help really explain just what people will do and why. A lot of the circumstances and situations in the countries that these people are coming from Honduras, from El Salvador, from Venezuela,
¿Contenta
are
de ir a
so
casa?
dire.
Gracias a Dios, sí.
So
¿Cómo se siente en este momento ya finalmente de dirigirse al norte?
Feliz. Gracias a mi padre.
She thanks the Lord for being able to make it this far, and she's happy.
And calling RN, I'm not saying that I wasn't asking for Victor to tell them that they're villainized, but the media, or the media, as I'm part of one, there's a lot of rhetoric that from all different types of outlets and communities that do tend to villainize immigrants and migrants and refugees, and it's something that I think is valuable to talk about. So.
What you're seeing here is now a lady who works for the bus line, and just basically marking all the persons who at one point were there at the shelter, and she's just only check marking that they have boarded the bus. As you can see, there's not many belongings, just some bags and some snacks, maybe a set of clothes that they were giving at the shelter. And you can see their smiles in their faces, happy to go up north and catch up with other friends and relatives. Young children have toys like this. ¿A dónde se dirige,
So,
señor?
No, Salvador. Para Nueva York.
Victor, I would love for you to spend a little bit more time with each of these people, if you can, and ask them just some deeper questions. What are their journeys? What are their stories?
¿Hay algo que fue muy difícil que en el camino para usted? He says he had no problems along the way. Señora, una experiencia difícil en el camino.
Pues la verdad no, gracias a Dios todo fue bien y estuvimos en un albergue donde estuvimos casi 3 meses que se llama Senda de Vida. Esperamos nuestro turno para que nos procesaran y gracias a Dios todo salió bien.
¿Usted fue de las que estuvo en la lista de asilo?
En Senda de Vida estuve con el del pastor Héctor.
Okay, this is really interesting. She was seeking asylum, and she at one point went to the port of entry to be put on her name be put on the list, and she waited on the Mexican side 3 months until her name, her number came up, but it took 3 months to wait there at Senda de Vida. Había muchas personas como usted esperando tanto tiempo.
Sí, ahí todavía quedaron muchas personas, muchísimas personas, muchas familias que todavía no pueden procesarlas todavía. Apenas estamos en el 164 en familia y faltan los demás. No, van saliendo apenas 162 familias.
She's, she says that there are so many families there at the Mexican shelter Senda de Vida with Pastor Hector Silva who are just waiting there for their turn uh, to to come to talk to an officer there at the port of entry in hopes that their story is sold, that they need the asylum. ¿Cuánto tiempo estuvo esperando usted, señora? ¿Cuánto tiempo estuvo esperando para poder cruzar?
Aquí o ya. 4 días. Sí.
In her case, it was 4 days, but she probably crossed illegally just based on the number of days. Because of my understanding is the majority take 2 to 3 months to wait their turn for an asylum.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Victor, for taking the time to really, dive into these people's stories. We think here at HAPS that having that empathetic approach and, the human first approach to these stories is incredibly beneficial. And Colleen, I just want to talk to you directly again. I would love to speak with you directly further. You say you have stories. That's absolutely incredible. You can reach out to me directly. It's AGENBUSKE at haps.tv. That's HAPPS.tv. You can also join our virtual newsroom. This is for everybody. Our virtual newsroom on Facebook and pitch stories directly to producers like me, like Andrew, like Andra. So please, absolutely reach out to us. Let's have a conversation. So, Victor, thank you so much. This is absolutely incredible. What's going on around you right now? I know that there was another bus leaving at 9. Is there another bus later in the day? What's the flow of people looking like right now?
Yes, the bus that was leaving at 8:30 was the one carrying that family from Venezuela. The one right behind me, is the one departing at 9 Central Time, of course.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 3 passengers to board, and they should be taken off. Some, like they mentioned, they're going to Maryland. Others are going to New York, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And as you saw, they're in their faces, they have a smile. Finally, they have a smile. And I say finally because of what some relief. They are now at ease. They have endured not only crossing borders, they have endured also the detention facilities, where our federal agents are doing also a tremendous effort. We have to also recognize their job. But now here they've been released, and now they're going to catch up with their relatives and friends up north.
Is there anybody left there, or has it completely emptied by this point?
Right now, no one else is boarding the 9 p.m. Bus.
Mm-hmm.
There's only maybe about 20.
Yeah.
There's only maybe about 20 who are still inside the bus station.
Yeah. I'm so curious where they're headed and when they might be leaving. And also, I just wanted to make a comment. The sunset behind you looked absolutely stunning, I think. Wasn't it like purple? just a random comment. It looked really gorgeous.
It did.
So,
Disculpe, ¿a qué hora sale su...?
If you're just now joining us, we're on the ground in McAllen at a bus station where refugees and migrants are seeking asylum or have crossed the border illegally and are being released from detention centers to travel across the country to family members' homes, to appointed asylum locations. So thank you so much for joining us.
The next bus is at 10 o'clock. ¿Para dónde se dirige el autobús en el que está usted?
A Chicago.
¿De qué país viene usted?
Honduras.
He's heading to Chicago, and he's from Honduras. ¿Viene solo con su hijo o viene con la familia entera? He only comes with his son. How old is he? ¿Cuántos años tiene su niño? He's only 9 years old. ¿Cuál fue lo más difícil para usted? ¿Fue atravesar México?
Atravesar México.
¿Qué fue lo complicado de México?
Porque ahorita está ahí, no dejan pasar a nadie.
¿Qué complicación tuvo?
Ay, que había que rodear donde tenían retenes, caminar y todo.
Basically, the most difficulty while in Mexico was evading the different checkpoints that the Mexican authorities have set up. As you know, the Mexican president uh, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador has agreed with President Trump to strengthen the southern border. So that's why now Central Americans are having to evade different checkpoints, not only the southern border in Mexico, but also the different checkpoints that are set up in in the interior of Mexico.
So, there are a few interesting questions in here, and there's one that I would like to address,
Sure.
and then one I would love to turn on you, Victor. But this visual of the families is really stunning. So thank you for continuing to show us this.
You're seeing one of the buses now departing the Central Bus Station. Go ahead.
So Kayo at Rainbow Trails asks, where are the cages? And I think that there might be some, additional intention behind that. But to address the, really stark and horrific conditions that we've seen from some detention centers in McAllen and in El Paso, that is something that we are so desperately trying to bring to you and show to you, and to be able to talk to the migrants who are being held in these horrific conditions, intense outside and over 100-degree weather. It is so difficult. It is proving to be incredibly difficult. There's, if it's not surprising, just incredibly high security on these locations. So it's hard to get within a reasonable distance that it would make sense to even show on a live stream. But please hang tight. This is something I have a few leads this week that we're hoping to be able to follow through with, and ideally show and talk to those and speak to those people being held in those conditions.
Yes, those
Yeah.
detention facilities are located just about 8 miles south from McAllen. The, they have 2 detention facilities. There is the other bus already heading up north. That's the large group that was boarding a little while ago. Let me go back to the camera. Basically, they are supposed to. It's my understanding. The migrants, once they're detained, they're to stay in those facilities for 3 days. Not more than 3 days. There's been some incidents that they've stayed there longer. We are not sure of the reasons. My understanding is also that some of the minors that have died, there was one child who died in Westlaco processing facility, but he was already sick as per authorities. He came in with the flu, and then he's brought into a cold chamber of some sort, a detention cell, and then things got complicated and he passed away. Um, the Texas Civil Rights Organization, with some of their attorneys, are now filing some type of report in, in hopes to, I guess, put pressure on those conditions. So they're located in different places. There are some Border Patrol stations located in South McAllen. There are some in Westlaco, Rio Grande City, Brownsville. We have about 11 ports of entry here in Deep South Texas, and there's at least 1 or 2 Border Patrol processing centers near those ports of entry.
Thank you so much for that additional context. And, as I know we don't have a ton of time left with the rest of the migrants who are in the bus station, so it'd be wonderful to just continue gathering stories and chatting with people. And I really appreciate your efforts so far. You're a total pro at this, Victor. But just to, really, really see the conditions as much as possible, and just see the bus station as much as possible, because, it hasn't been the easiest thing to try to tell this story. So it'd be great to see it as much as possible. And while you are showing us the bus station, it would be great if I could just ask you a couple of questions, and something that you might be able to answer a little bit better. than I can, and I can be, the biggest context that I have is, Venezuela and the work that I've done there. But during World Refugee last week, HAPS did a few streams from around the world, one including Venezuelan refugees in Trinidad and Tobago and Colombia. And Colleen asks, so they aren't seeking asylum. Please ask why they aren't seeking asylum at ports of entry. Many of my clients wish they did because now no papers. And one of the biggest answers that we heard from Venezuelan refugees, or whenever we were talking to the aid workers in Colombia, a lot of people don't seek refugee status, and it might be similar to not seeking asylum because those papers ultimately mean a longer process that prevents them from getting the jobs, and just basically the jobs that they are, trying to immigrate to the U.S. for. But you might
Right.
be able to address this a little bit more.
Sure. Well, as you heard a little while ago, one of the ladies spent 3 months waiting on the Mexican side just to get an opportunity to speak to a Customs and Border Protection officer, immigration officer there at the port of entry. Many just get desperate. I mean, spending 3 months on waiting on the Mexican side, and that's
Right. And go ahead
even
and flip the camera around while you're
without
chatting if you don't mind. Thank you so
sure,
much.
and that's even without the assurance of knowing that their story is gonna be sold.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have CBP officers have to always assume as they come to any conversations with migrants that they're here just to stay. They have to share a situation that qualifies for asylum. So it would have to be whether it's violence that they've been subject to, maybe even their children attempted to recruit into gangs. So it has to be something harsh uh, in order to convince the criteria of each CBP officer. So some may not want to wait that long, may not want to wait 3 months. I was visiting Matamoros, Mexico, about a month ago, and I spoke with a Cuban gentleman who was also waiting there, and he did mention the 3 months. So that may be one of the reasons. But let me approach here this gentleman again. Disculpe, ¿usted está pidiendo asilo político?
No, no.
¿Usted cruzó nomás ilegal y se entregó?
Sí.
So as you can see, this gentleman with his 9-year-old boy, he just crossed illegally. He didn't wait for the 3 months to seek asylum. He turned himself in, and he was eventually released. ¿Cuál fue la razón por la que usted les dijo a los oficiales que podía entrar a los Estados Unidos?
No,
¿Cuál fue su historia?
no me preguntaron ellos, no me hicieron esa pregunta. Pero la verdad, los venimos de allá por el problema del país de Honduras. Es un caos ahorita. No se haya trabajo y está fregado.
He says he didn't specifically set any particular story to the Border Patrol agent, and he just escaped his country due to lack of employment opportunities. So this gentleman did not request asylum. He just crossed the river illegally and turned himself in. Uh, Let me ask him
What?
about the notice to appear before a judge. Le dieron un
Right.
citatorio para comparecer a un
Correcto. Ay,
de los papeles que les entregan. I'm asking him to show me the documentation
Thank you.
that they're giving. I'm not sure if the stream is gonna show the detail, but Freddy Escobar, he is a citizen of Honduras. He arrived into the United States near the Hidalgo port of entry on June 24th, and he's got a notice to appear, and it said, ¿qué fecha es la que tiene que usted comparecer con el juez? I'm asking him when he he he, ha- he hasn't yet identified and read thoroughly the documentation. I assume because he's already in the U.S. and that's what he all he cares about. But that is, what you saw, the paperwork there was a notice to appear before a judge.
Do you mind asking him what the the holding time was like, and the holding facility was like whenever he was in the detention center?
¿Cuánto tiempo estuvo usted detenido junto con su hijo
No, ahí en migración solo 2 días. No, ahí lo tratan bien aún. ¿Para qué? Bien los 3 tiempos.
¿Qué había de comer?
Siempre su burrita, manzana, hielo, juguito.
Uh, f- uh, he says that they treated him well. He says that they would give him apple juices to eat. He claims he was treated well at
It's good.
the
Yeah.
detention facility. That's a good story. And I'm glad to hear those stories because others are not as good as that one.
Absolutely.
We're gonna approach these other ladies and see where they're heading. Disculpe, ¿a qué parte del país se dirigen ustedes?
A Dallas, Texas,
A Dallas,
Missouri.
Missouri, Dallas. ¿Y usted a dónde se dirige?
Igual, igual.
Igual, a Missouri.
And
Ok,
Colleen, I'm not going to ask if they plan to show up to court. I don't want to get anybody
van,
in trouble.
van a comparecer ante un juez federal eventualmente.
Sí,
Sí planean hacerlo.
claro que sí.
¿Qué tan ¿Cuál fue lo más difícil para ustedes aquí en México?
Mm,
¿Fue difícil México?
No tanto,
¿Qué fue lo más difícil? ¿Estar detenido?
claro.
¿Cómo fue esa experiencia? ¿Me puede elaborar?
No se puede explicar esa experiencia.
It's hard to explain the experience that we had at the Border Patrol detentions facility.
Can she tell us about her, her journey, what the travel was like, the trip was like?
¿El viaje en sí para usted también fue difícil?
Eh, eh, pues no, sí, un poco difícil el venir, digamos, salir del país.
¿Salir del país, entrar a México?
Sí,
¿Qué fue lo que ocurrió ahí en México?
bueno, el hecho de tal vez el tener temor de que nos agarraran y sabiendo de que nosotros ahí sí que por una necesidad muy fuerte es que nos venimos para acá.
Yeah. Her fear in the southern border of Mexico was of being caught and being sent back to her country. ¿De qué países vienen ustedes?
Ya El Salvador, Guatemala, igual.
Right? They're from El Salvador and Guatemala. Their
Mm-hmm.
biggest fear was being caught even in the southern border. And that's what we've been seeing in different media outlets, that in the southern border now the Mexican National Guard is assisting in the immigration agents in the southern border to prevent that influx of migrants
Yeah.
into Mexico. That was part of the deal between President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and Donald Trump, that they strengthened the border down south.
Right. And just something that, how did they travel from Guatemala to Texas?
Sí.
Like, how did they actually get here? Did they drive? Did they pay a smuggler? Did they walk?
Sí.
That's a long way,
El
regardless.
viaje estuvo muy largo desde su país. Subieron autobuses, ¿cómo lo hicieron?
Por autobuses. Autobús. Sí, por autobuses.
Mm-hmm.
The majority came from the southern border on bus lines.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it looks like there's only probably about a dozen left here now. As you may recall, the earlier images, this waiting area at the McAllen Central Bus Station was packed,
Yeah.
and now you can see that it's probably about 25% or 20% filled up now.
Right.
Right.
Well, Victor, thank you so much for your time and your energy, and just your gusto. I mean, the way that this live stream happened was I was just walking you through the app, and you just had your journalistic instinct to show up to the bus station, and within 3 minutes, there was a group of 30 migrants walking up. So thank you for following your nose and helping us make this happen. We truly couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Have a good day.
absolutely. So we have, and basically, Victor, you can just keep the camera based on the face onto the bus station, that would be really great, because I'm going to do basically a bit of like a wrap up right now. So thank you so much for your help, and thank you so much to the entire team at HAPS News who helped make this happen. I mean, I get to be here on camera and talking to these incredible people from around the world, but there are producers and tech and directors and our creative officers who help make and orchestrate every single live stream. It includes Andra, Andrew, Cicely, David, Drew, Frank, Josh, Nicole, Max, Mark, Brett, Adam, and I hope that that's everybody. Josh, and of course, Josh, who was the director on today's stream. Thank you so much, Josh, for being ready to just make this happen right away. Always appreciate your gusto. If you enjoyed this stream, if you are enjoying watching HAPS, please give us a follow, share this stream, go back through our Twitter feed and look at the mini streams that we've done from around the world. I am just so excited that we got a story out of McAllen, because I cannot tell you how long it's been trying to gain access to this, highly protected and incredibly valuable story. So again, thank you, Victor. We really, really appreciate your time and effort.
My pleasure. Good night.
Thank you so much. And I'm Amber Janeski. You can find me on all social media at AGENUSKE. One last shout out to the HAPS Virtual Newsroom on Facebook. If you have any great ideas that you want to share with producers like me, you can reach us directly in the HAPS Newsroom, Virtual Newsroom on Facebook. It is a bustling community of citizens, journalists, lawyers, and everybody here in between from around the world. So join us there, follow us on Twitter, retweet the stream. Thank you all so much. Have a good night, and I'll see you next time. Bye.